So my podcast title that they took away from me was Unscripted, Unfiltered. And that's the Scott Hunnigan's Joe Mullings podcast. So we're going with that agenda.
Are we going
here.
back old school
We're
to
going-
unfiltered, unscripted?
Unscripted, unfiltered, right? But we were, before the cameras were on, we were talking about Innovator's Dilemma.
Yeah.
And we were talking about some of the big strategics, and we were talking about technologies. But then on the other side, we were talking about healthcare for our 8 billion people on this planet, and how there's misaligned interest, spend, technology pursuit.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting concept. For those who maybe aren't familiar with Clayton Christensen's work, Innovator's Dilemma, often in markets, you get these lower cost, lower featured entrants. They don't meet the market's total requirements. I mean, you know, Honda, his initial example is Honda is motorcycles, and they took their motorcycle engines and then adapted them into cars and had a low cost car. Or, you know, and then they went all the way up later on to Lexus and everything else, you know, and then they had the full line, but they were always lower cost. And then, you know, famously Intel, you know, Andy Grove had to push them, only the paranoid survived, to give up on their cash cow, you know, margin chip business to go into PCs. Everyone knows the story, Intel inside, they become a dominant player, but then what do? You know, they create high margin, you know, products. They miss the whole mobile application. Learn their lesson there, but still it had been ingrained with them, and they missed the whole NVIDIA AI chip aspect. And one of the things I worry about in today's market is you've got all this profitability that is in 3 primary areas, the US, Europe, and Japan, that represent only about 2 billion of the 8 billion people. And the companies that are there do things to kind of protect those businesses, and also then use these other 6 billion, you know, as lower cost environments. So you don't, you know, you take do we need another $2 million high featured, you know, robot, or do we need something where, hey, when we invented connectivity, the internet and cell phones, only 2 billion people had access to computing power. Now everybody has access because of what technology. How do we apply the lessons of a cell phone to medical devices to solve for that 6 billion? You can still have these high feature set products, but I also worry that Intuitive and Medtronics of the world, and they're going to get pushed to the upper right corner over the next 50 years when you have lower cost companies that are state supported, like in China, coming up to compete with them.
And you're even seeing that right now. I mean, you can look at companies like SS Innovation selling a $600,000 robot in India, to your point, starting in that lower left side of the quadrant and starting to get traction.
That's right.
And you know, and you just saw J&J buy into a Chinese robot, right? To get into that market, a low-cost Chinese robot.
Yep.
So that
and the
translates
cost
across.
to develop, like, you know, I was the CEO at Verb with J&J and Google. You know, we're into that with all the instrument sets across 6 specialties, 57 procedures. You know, I'm sure they've spent well over $1 billion now. I mean, probably closer to 2 billion through all that development that's now at 10 years, right? Same thing with Medtronic, publicly disclosed with Hugo. You talk to those Chinese guys, they have a full functional robot with all these instruments for under $100 million, like a tenth of the cost of development, which is super impressive, and their cost of production is much lower now. And those are some terrific, interesting products. That's going to come to heart valves. It's going to come to electrophysiology catheters. It's going to come, you know, to other areas that are high margin product areas.
Do you think that we then become a regionalized business in some of the sort of domains and geographies around the world, where will we see more of the Chinese technologies that drifted off of a US-based technology and leverage that IP and take care of themselves there?
I do think it's a thesis of mine. I'm a board advisor and an investor in one of those multi-product Chinese companies that I think, you know, can then expand out and be a global brand and a global company because of their cost position, because of technology, because of state support, because of protective pricing in China, tariff issues between areas now, not you know, getting into the politics of anything. It's just the reality of what we face today, which makes it hard to go back, you know, in 2006 or 7, selling Volcano products to China, I wasn't worried about the Chinese knocking off that product. They had other bigger, fish to fry, so to speak, and we could go build a business and be profitable building our business in China. If I was doing Volcano today, that just wouldn't be as much of an option to do that. So you take a large population to protect the base, and in working with these Chinese companies, they're faced with the Chinese pricing issues as well. So they're looking to expand more regionally there, and then into Europe, and then eventually to the U.S.
Does that then become go big or go home, is what the big swings are being taken at by the large strategics now?
I think so. I think if you're of that size, yes. And hopefully over the next 10, 15 years, it also opens up capital sources for U.S. innovation or Israeli innovation or European innovation, where Chinese company says, hey, I can get some innovation here or there to go faster as well. It becomes more completely global on innovation. But it is a lot less expensive. Just like, back again at Verb and Volcano, it was cheaper doing innovation in Israel than it was in Southern California or Northern California. Got a lot more done for a fifth of the capital.
Well, we see that with the software development right now, and all the AI function. The majority
right.
is happening
Same.
offshore, right? Same
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah, you're the quality
Between
of work.
AI and the availability of engineers and the cost of that engineer, and the work ethic and the productivity of those engineers, is much, much higher.
Yeah, and if it's not built here, it's no good. Has started to creep out of some of the strategics finally too.
Yeah.
Because I think they realize that overbuilding, complex, per unit of work by dollar volume spent just becomes untenable after a while.
Yeah, it reminds me of, the beginning of my career. You see these evolutions that every 10, 15 years. At the beginning of my career, every device was made, when I worked at Edwards at the beginning of my career at Baxter, was made in the US. Then we opened into a tax-free domain in Puerto Rico. Then we went to Costa Rica. You had to offshore manufacturing to compete. Same thing at Volcano. Boston was being made outside the US with their catheters. We moved to Costa Rica. Could have been a little bit cheaper if we would have gone to the Far East, but that was just time zone wise made sense for us. It's the same thing here with offshoring of R&D and software. You put AI on top of it, it electrifies, it magnifies the possibility and the capability that can be had. If you don't do it, you're not going to be able to be competitive.
Yeah. Let's drop down to some technologies you're keeping your eyes on, and one of them that I've been following closely and been involved with you is OnTarget. OTL has got that image-guided therapy, early days, first in category, so to speak, the Cytolux platform, answering a critical procedure and therapeutic platform, right? As much as we're going towards minimally invasive surgery, the surgeon no longer has access visually or tactily to what they're trying to get at. You've always been an early call of where there are expanding markets. Image-guided therapies, thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I've built a lot of my career around what I call precision-guided therapy. It was a term we invented at Volcano, which was to say, you've got pre-procedural information, para-procedural information, and post-procedural information. So if I can augment pre-procedural information, that might have, in a case of a stent, in an angiography case with cardiology, it might be your preoperative information from your angiogram. It may be a preoperative CT, like today with like a heart flow or a lucid procedure, which tells you where to stent, whether you should stent or not, physiologic and anatomical information, right? Then now I have a plan to go into my procedure with. Then I have additional information with IVUS information or FFR information in that procedure, or in the case of OnTarget for surgery, I've got an injectable, drug that lights up cancer. So as we move to least invasive or less invasive and robotics, I can't palpate, I can't feel. So now I need some visual information. Now that visual information could also be created in 3 dimensions. So think about it as just like programming for a CNC machine. I have all of that. Now I can program a robot to go in and precisely exercise. It was like back at, I was talking to Scott Drake, that you had on earlier. At ViewRay, we had the same thing with cancer, radiation dosing with MRI driven. Again, it was the MRI providing the information better than X-ray to be more precise relative to your therapy guidance. That means I can improve clinical outcomes, I can decrease costs, I can provide better access in the sense that I can make every surgeon, as good as the other one. Take that differentiate, and this is partially what robots do with other information and data. Like the guy who's a 4 can become an 8. The guy who's a 9 can become a 9.5.
And you're mean now, right?
It's just like any other form of manufacturing where you introduce robots, you're taking and data collection, you're reducing the variability of the manufacturing process. So that's what I think, having the pre-procedural information, the para-procedural information, like with OnTarget, but then it's post-procedural. Now I've done my case. Now I do, again, I go back with IVUS in the interventional cardiology world. Is my stent opposed to the wall of the artery? It is. Does it cover the plaque that I wanted to cover it? No, it doesn't. Oh, okay, I may need to touch that up with a balloon. I may need to put an extension of the stent. I didn't put it exactly where I wanted. I may need to go back and I missed these 2 little spots. I need to excise that additional portion of the lung with OnTarget. Now I've got better outcomes. But I also have, shorter procedural times often, less blood usage. I now have increased OR capacity. So you mix that technology along with then some technology like Proximy, which is allowing you to do scheduling and allowing you to assess procedural segments. Now I have segments that are getting shorter. I can take that manufacturing process and share it with other people, and I get that snowballing effect of improving quality, improving uniformity that comes from data. Today, we don't do that in surgery. It's not like manufacturing. I feel like where we were 30 years ago when total quality management and Deming and Lean and Kaizen and push, all these terms that you learn from manufacturing, we haven't applied into surgery. Now with better data, again, pre, peri, post, and capture systems like Proximy, we can start really improving things. Then you throw connectivity and you see what's happening with remote access. So now we can leverage a surgeon. We can start getting after, maybe that's the way we do a better job of leveraging the $2 million robot, because now if we can use it more by having connectivity remotely, and they can be there for only the 3 or 4 segments that are the most important, and a lower trained nurse practitioner or whoever can do other segments, that's what you would do in a manufacturing process. So those are things that you've got to break down historic norms allowing certain elements of things to get after that. But we now are going to have the technology, or we're having the technology to enable that exciting future.
So I want to jump on this. We can have all this technology, but if we go back to Deming out of the crisis, right, it becomes culture. Culture in a hospital versus culture in an ASC. They're 2 different teams. They're entirely 2 different teams.
Great point.
And so you can introduce all these technologies, but this is the way we've always done it, tends to fall inside of a hospital.
Yeah.
Where an ASC has different aligned interests, different decision makers, and has a brand new slate, clean slate oftentimes, like what Oliver Keown's doing with Oath Surgical, to rewrite the book.
Great example, yeah.
Right? And so with all these technologies coming out, do we need additional playing fields, that ASC outpatient surgery model, maybe to get initial traction?
Yes, I agreed. I think we can go back, right, to Innovator's dilemma. The ASC only could do these procedures, at the beginning,
right.
And now technology is allowing something to be outpatient that used to, require an overnight stay.
Right.
So now they can start tackling more and more, and it puts the pressure on the hospital to have to adopt these new manufacturing, quote unquote,
That's right.
processes as you go forward.
That's right.
And that generally takes some technology. But these physicians that run often these ASCs are very patient focused, very economically focused, and it creates a great, dynamic for innovation to take place. Because how can I get more patients through, which is back to manufacturing 101. What's your cycle time? What's your throughput time? How do you lean things out?
What's the quality output?
Exactly.
Because the quality is designed in, not inspected in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think hospitals, it's focused manufacturing versus unfocused manufacturing, and I kind of compare it to like a really nice, like tailored suit shop. Look at Joe looking so nice in his tie and suit. Versus like, what does like a department store become? it's just a bunch of rented out, unfocused space, and it's without any kind of soul and no cost advantage, no innovation versus the other. And so we need more of that focus factory mentality as we go forward.
As usual.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Scotty. I'm Joe Mullings from the floor of the MedTech Conference, San Diego. Be well.